I didn't plan on falling in love the night I almost destroyed her career. I planned on writing the story that would finally make mine. That's the part no one tells you about ambition. How quietly it sharpens your edges until you forget what it feels like to hold something gently. When Emma Hayes looked at me under the stadium lights in St. Petersburg and said, "Don't make me choose between you and my career," I still believed I was the one in control. I wasn't. Before we go any further, if you love emotionally intense stories like this one, subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments which city you're watching from. I read every single one, and I love knowing where these stories land. My name is Mia Alvarez. I'm 29 years old, and I've spent the last 7 years building a reputation as a sports journalist who asks the questions drivers hope I won't. I work for a national motorsport publication that covers the IndyCar season, from green flag to checkered. I'm known for being precise, relentless, and annoyingly observant. My editors call it instinct. My ex called it emotional distance. He wasn't wrong. Emma Hayes was the kind of driver you build a season around. Number 1 in the standings, fast in every condition, surgical with tire management. The kind of competitor who could feel grip through asphalt like it was nerve-ending and bone. Sponsors loved her. The paddock respected her. And she had never, not once, given the press anything personal. Until the night I saw her hands shaking after qualifying. It was subtle. A tremor as she removed her gloves. The cameras were off. The team was distracted reviewing data. I noticed because noticing is what I do. I asked a simple question. "Everything okay?" She gave me the polished smile driver's practice in media training. Always, but something in her eyes contradicted the word. That was the moment the line blurred. The season stretched ahead of us like a ribbon of asphalt across America. Texas heat shimmering off the speedway, Long Beach corners tightening under Pacific wind, Indianapolis humming with history. I was there for every lap, and slowly, so was she. The first real crack happened in Barber Motorsports Park. Rain during practice, cold tires, a snap of oversteer that nearly sent her into the barrier. She saved it, barely, and came into the pits with adrenaline still humming under her skin. When she climbed out of the cockpit, soaked and furious, she didn't look at her team. She looked at me. Later that night, in the dim quiet of the paddock after most crews had left, she found me reviewing notes in the media center. "You saw it," she said. "I see everything," I answered before I could stop myself. She didn't smile. "Then you know I'm pushing too hard." That was the first time she let me in. From there, it became a pattern, brief conversations after sessions, lingering glances during press conferences. My recorder still between us, but our words drifting beyond official answers. She talked about pressure, about carrying sponsors, expectations, legacy. I talked about deadlines, click-through rates, and the constant hunger to matter. Neither of us mentioned the tension building in the silence between sentences. Indianapolis was where it stopped being theoretical. The 500 isn't just a race, it's a cathedral, and Emma moved through it like she belonged on the altar. Pole position. Headlines. Interviews stacked back to back. I was assigned an exclusive sit-down feature that could define my year. We met in a quiet suite overlooking pit lane the evening before the race. It was supposed to be professional. I asked about preparation. She answered in crisp, calculated phrases. I asked about mental strain. She paused longer than usual. I asked what scared her. She looked directly at me, and the room shifted. "Losing control," she said softly. "Of the car?" I almost asked, but we both knew she didn't mean that. When the interview ended, I should have packed my equipment and left. Instead, we stood there in the low light, the hum of generators outside vibrating through the glass. I could feel the gravity of something forming. Dangerous and magnetic. "You don't just ask questions," she said. "You look for fractures, occupational hazard. And what if you find one?" The right answer would have been clinical, detached. Instead, I said, "Depends who's braking." That was the first time her composure slipped entirely. The next day, she won the Indianapolis 500 by half a second. The roar was deafening, milk splashing, confetti in the air, cameras everywhere. And when she climbed out of the car, triumphant and shaking, she didn't search for her team first. She searched for me. In the chaos, in full view of 1,000 lenses, our eyes locked. And in that suspended second, I knew two things with terrifying clarity. I was falling for the grid's top driver. And if I kept chasing this story, I might be the one who forced her to choose. Winning Indianapolis didn't calm anything down. It amplified it. Emma left the speedway with a 10-point lead in the championship and the kind of momentum that turns drivers into legends. My feature ran 2 days later, sharp, insightful, controlled. I wrote about discipline, about composure, about her ability to manage chaos at 230 miles per hour. I did not write about the way she had looked at me through the confetti. The inbox reaction was immediate. Editors thrilled. Sponsors pleased. My credibility elevated. But when Emma texted me that night, "You were kinder than I expected," my chest tightened in a way no headline ever had. We landed in Detroit the following week. The river slicing silver between glass towers and concrete runoff zones. Street circuits are unforgiving. There's no space for error. No gravel to save you. The metaphor wasn't lost on me. I had spent years building professional armor. Around her, it was thinning. Access became my advantage. And my problem. Because of the IndyCar media rotation, I was embedded with her team for the doubleheader weekend. That meant long hours in the paddock, inside the engineering trailer, standing close enough to hear her breathing steady before she climbed into the cockpit. I told myself it was proximity for the sake of journalism. It stopped feeling that way when she started looking for me before sessions. During Friday practice, she brushed past me on her way to debrief and murmured, "You staying through qualifying?" "Of course," I said. "Good." One word, too heavy. Saturday night, after race 1, she finished second. Not disappointed, not satisfied, controlled. The team celebrated the podium, champagne sprayed lightly, mechanics laughing under string lights strung between haulers. I kept my distance, taking notes, recording quotes. Professional. Then she walked over. "No recorder?" she asked. "Not tonight." The air shifted. We ended up sitting on the back steps of her transporter long after most of the paddock had quieted. Detroit's skyline blinking in the distance. The river moving slow and black beyond the barriers. She talked about the pressure of defending a lead. I talked about the pressure of being taken seriously in a male-dominated beat. For the first time, we weren't performing. "You're different when the cameras are off," she said. "So are you." She studied me for a moment that lasted too long to be neutral. "That's dangerous." "Why?" "Because I don't know which version you'd write about." It was the first time she acknowledged the line between us out loud. The next morning, rumors started. Nothing concrete, just the paddock whisper network. A mechanic noticing how often she glanced toward Media Row. A PR assistant mentioning how I seemed to get longer interviews than most. It was subtle, but in racing, subtle spreads fast. I told myself to pull back. At Road America 2 weeks later, I tried. Wisconsin air smelled like cut grass and fuel. Long straights, fast corners. I kept my interviews short, redirected questions to strategy instead of emotion, avoided eye contact longer than necessary. It felt responsible. She noticed immediately. After qualifying, pole position again. She walked straight past her team and toward me, helmet still in hand. "You're avoiding me," she said quietly. "I'm covering the championship. You were doing that before, and I still am." Silence stretched between us, thick as humidity. "You don't get to step back just because it's easier," she said. "It's not easier," I replied. She lowered her voice. "Then what is it?" I didn't answer, because the truth was inconvenient. It wasn't about ease. It was about self-preservation. That night I watched her from the pit wall during final practice, focused, precise, untouchable. The top driver on the grid, the woman everyone feared in clean air. And I realized something uncomfortable. I wasn't just attracted to her strength. I was drawn to the cracks she only let me see. Race day was brutal. High tire degradation, late caution. She fought for every inch of asphalt, defending like a champion. When she crossed the line first again, extending her points lead, the paddock erupted. She climbed out of the car, visor up, sweat tracking down her temple, and she didn't look at me. Not once. Professional. Controlled. Public. The message was clear. But when I returned to my hotel that night, there was a note slipped under my door. No signature. No handwriting I recognized immediately. Just 3 words. "Stop pulling away." I stood in that hallway for a long time, the hum of the ice machine echoing behind me, and understood something I hadn't allowed myself to admit yet. This wasn't a flirtation. This was a collision building momentum. And neither of us had lifted off the throttle. Emma Hayes didn't win races by being reckless. She won them by calculating exactly how much risk she could afford. That's what made her terrifying in clean air. She could stretch fuel 3 laps longer than anyone. She could make a set of soft tires survive when they shouldn't. She didn't overtake out of desperation. She waited until the math favored her. That control made what was happening between us even more dangerous. Mid-Ohio was technical, tight elevation changes, blind entries, the kind of circuit that punished impatience. I stood on the inside of Turn 5 during Friday practice, headset pressed to one ear, notebook in hand, watching her number 7 car carve through traffic like she could see 3 corners ahead. Smooth throttle, no wasted motion. Surgical. The team called her Ice. I knew better. After the session, she climbed out of the cockpit, helmet tucked under her arm, fire suit streaked faintly with rubber debris. Sweat clung to the edge of her hairline. She walked straight toward engineering, debriefed with calm precision, then glanced once toward Media Row, at me. It was small, almost invisible, but not to someone who made a living catching details. By Saturday, the whispers had weight. One of the junior reporters asked me casually, "You getting exclusive access now?" I deflected. Another mentioned how often she answered my questions first in press conferences. A PR rep lingered too long when we stood within proximity. Racing paddocks are ecosystems, and ecosystems sense imbalance. That afternoon, qualifying went sideways. A red flag, changing track temperature, a late run that left her third instead of pole. When she removed her gloves inside the garage, I saw it again. That faint tremor in her fingers. No cameras were rolling. I shouldn't have stepped closer. "You're overdriving corner entry," I said quietly. Her eyes snapped to mine. "Since when are you an engineer?" "I'm not. I just watch you." The air tightened between us. "You think I'm pushing?" "I think you're trying to prove something." Silence. Then softer. "To who?" That was the question neither of us wanted to answer. That night there was a team-sponsored dinner at a private lodge overlooking the circuit. Polished wood interiors, expensive bourbon, controlled laughter. I was invited as press. Emma was seated between executives, poised and immaculate in a tailored black blazer that made her look less like a driver and more like an heir to something powerful. She handled every handshake with ease. But when I moved through the room to leave, her gaze followed me. Outside, the air was cooler, the hum of insects replacing the drone of polite conversation. I stood near the railing overlooking the darkened track, replaying the day in my head when I felt her presence before I saw her. "You're not subtle," she said behind me. "Neither are you." She leaned beside me, forearms resting on the railing, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from her skin. For a moment, neither of us spoke. "I don't like when you analyze me," she said. "I analyze everyone, not like this." I turned toward her. "Then tell me what this is." Her jaw flexed. For a driver known for composure, she was suddenly searching for traction. "It's distraction," she said finally. "And you don't allow distractions." "Not when I'm leading the championship." There it was, the line, the title, the pressure. I nodded. "Then maybe you shouldn't be standing this close." She didn't move. A car passed on the service road below, headlights slicing briefly across her face. In that flash of light, I saw something unguarded. Fear, maybe. Or desire wrapped too tight. "You think I don't know what's at stake?" she asked. "I know you do. And you still keep showing up. So do you." That was the closest we'd come to touching. The space between us barely an inch, breath mingling. The kind of charged stillness that makes the world narrow. For a second, a fragile, suspended second, I thought she was going to close the distance. Instead, she stepped back. "This can't bleed into the season," she said. "It already has." Her eyes flicked toward the lodge, toward the world that watched her every move. "If anyone starts connecting dots," she continued, voice low, "it won't just be gossip. It'll be leverage." There it was again. Control. Strategy. Always thinking 3 corners ahead. "I won't write about you like this," I said. "That's not what I'm afraid of." The honesty in that sentence hit harder than anything else she'd said all weekend. We stood there in the quiet, tension humming louder than engines ever could. I could feel how close we were to something irreversible, but she was right. Mid-season. Championship lead. Contracts with morality clauses. Sponsors who liked their heroes uncomplicated. And me, the journalist who had built a career on exposure. When she finally walked back inside, leaving me alone under the mid-Ohio sky, I understood the math she was running. In clean air, she was unbeatable. In dirty air, in rumors, in speculation, in vulnerability, even the best drivers lose grip. And for the first time all season, Emma Hayes looked like she was driving on a surface she couldn't fully read. Texas Motor Speedway was chaos disguised as geometry. High banks, night race, engines screaming under artificial light. Oval racing doesn't allow quiet thoughts. It compresses everything into instinct and reflex. And Emma was brilliant on ovals. Not reckless, not flashy. Just relentless in traffic, carving through turbulence like she trusted physics more than fear. She didn't start from pole. She started 5th. By lap 30, she was 2nd. By lap 90, she was leading. From pit lane, I watched her number 7 car slice through air so thin it felt unreal. The grandstands blurred into a wall of white noise. I told myself I was here for coverage, for strategy analysis, for fuel windows and tire fall-off. But every time she passed the front stretch, my eyes tracked her automatically. Halfway through the race, a late caution shuffled the field. A risky pit call. She rejoined in third. I could see it even from behind the monitors, the tightness in her posture over team radio. Not panic, calculation. Then it happened. On the restart, the car ahead of her snapped loose out of turn 2. A twitch, a correction too late. Emma had a fraction of a second to react. She avoided the spin. Barely. The pack scattered like shrapnel. For a heartbeat, the championship leader was inches from the wall at 200 miles per hour. When she stabilized the car, the entire paddock exhaled. So did I. She finished second that night, strong points, still leading the championship. On paper, it was a success. In reality, it felt like a warning. Post-race interviews were loud, bright, invasive. Microphones stacked in front of her, questions about risk tolerance, about whether she'd pushed too hard. She answered calmly, as always, controlled, untouchable, except when her eyes found mine in the crowd. There was something raw there, not fear, exactly, but the kind of awareness that follows proximity to loss. I didn't expect her to knock on my hotel door. It was past midnight when I heard it. 3 firm taps, not tentative, not loud. When I opened the door, she was still in team-issued joggers and a fitted black hoodie, hair damp from a shower, face stripped of public composure. "You shouldn't be here," I said automatically. "I know." She stepped inside anyway. The room was dim, city lights bleeding through the curtains. The race still hummed in my ears, phantom engine noise that hadn't fully faded. She stood near the small desk, hands braced against it like she needed something solid. "You saw it," she said. "Yes." "I misjudged the wake. You corrected. By luck." I stepped closer without meaning to. "By skill." She let out a quiet breath, somewhere between frustration and confession. "I was inches from throwing away the season." "You didn't." "That's not the point." I understood then. It wasn't about the standings. It wasn't about the press cycle. It was about control. She had nearly lost it, and I had seen her at that edge. "You can't win every corner perfectly," I said. She looked at me. Not like a driver, not like a public figure, but like a woman trying to reconcile the space between strength and vulnerability. "I can't afford cracks," she replied. "You're allowed to be human." Her jaw tightened. "Not at this level." The silence between us shifted. There are moments when proximity becomes gravity, when stepping back requires more force than stepping forward. I could feel the decision forming before either of us spoke. "I was scared," she admitted finally. It was the first time she'd said anything like that to me. "For the car?" I asked softly. "For what happens if I lose control?" Her voice wasn't about the race anymore. I was standing close enough now that I could see the faint scar along her collarbone. Old, nearly invisible. The remnant of some past impact she'd never spoken about. The human beneath the helmet. "You don't lose control with me," I said. Her breath caught. "That's exactly what I'm afraid of." It wasn't dramatic. There was no sweeping movement, no cinematic build-up. She just reached for me, a hand at my waist, firm but uncertain. And for a split second, I hesitated. Not because I didn't want it, but because I understood the consequences. Morality clauses, sponsorship contracts, media credibility, championship math. Then I closed the distance. The kiss wasn't explosive. It was restrained, almost careful. Like both of us were testing traction before accelerating. Warm, slow, intentional. Her hand tightened slightly at my back, as if confirming I was real. For a heartbeat, the world reduced to breath and contact. When she pulled back, her forehead rested against mine. She studied my face like she was recalculating something mid-race. "Don't make me choose between you and my career." There it was. Not dramatic, not shouted, just honest. And in that dim hotel room in Texas, with the championship lead still hers and the season far from over, I realized something terrifying and inevitable. This wasn't a distraction anymore. It was momentum. And neither of us had lifted. The thing about secrets in racing is that they don't stay contained. They circulate like tire pressure. Subtle at first, then measurable. I woke up the morning after Texas with the taste of her still lingering and a headline draft open on my laptop. Hayes extends championship lead despite restart scare. Professional? clean, controlled. I wrote about aerodynamic wake, about defensive positioning, about composure under pressure. I did not write about her hand at my waist, or the way her voice softened when she admitted fear. But even as I typed, something had shifted. We didn't text about it. That was the first rule. No written evidence, no messages that could be screenshotted or misread. If we needed to talk, it happened face to face, in crowded garages where whispers were drowned by impact guns, or in passing moments where no one lingered long enough to question proximity. By the time we arrived in Long Beach, the tension had matured into something steadier. California sun bounced off the ocean and the concrete barriers, the street circuit tight and unforgiving. The paddock felt smaller there, closer, harder to disappear inside. She won pole again. Of course she did. When she stepped out of the car after qualifying, helmet tucked under her arm, she looked untouchable. Cameras flashed, sponsors hovered. Her smile was precise, practiced. But when the media scrum ended and the crowd thinned, she brushed past me and murmured, "Walk." It wasn't a request. We moved through the paddock like strangers, 5 feet of distance, no eye contact, no signals. We rounded the corner behind the hospitality units where team members rarely lingered. "You were right about Texas," she said without preamble. "About what?" "I can't afford cracks." My pulse slowed and sharpened at the same time. "Is that what this is to you?" Her jaw flexed. "It's risk. And you manage risk. Yes." I waited. And I don't know how to calculate this one. That was the closest she had come to admitting it mattered. We didn't touch. Not there. Not with crew members 10 yards away and PR assistants scanning constantly. But the space between us felt electric, like static before lightning. Saturday night, during a sponsor cocktail event, I made my first real mistake. A rival journalist, Aaron from Motorsport Weekly, leaned against the bar beside me and said casually, "You've been getting some interesting access lately." "I covered the championship leader," I replied evenly. He smirked. "Sure, but you also don't look at her the way most reporters do." The words landed harder than they should have. How do most reporters look at her? Like she's a story, and I don't? He studied me for half a second too long. "You look like you're trying not to be." That conversation stayed with me through the rest of the night. When Emma arrived, tailored navy dress, hair loose over her shoulders, she scanned the room instinctively before her gaze brushed mine. Just a second. No more. But I felt it. And apparently so did someone else. Later, as the event wound down, her PR manager intercepted me near the exit. "Mia," she said pleasantly. "Can I have a word?" Professional tone, controlled smile. "Of course." "We value your coverage," she continued. "It's thoughtful, balanced. But I want to remind you that Emma's contract includes morality clauses and public conduct expectations. There's been some chatter about media familiarity." My throat tightened. "Familiarity? Nothing concrete," she said smoothly. "Just perception. And perception shapes narrative. There it was. Not accusation. Warning. That night I didn't sleep much. Sunday's race was brutal. Long Beach punishes impatience. One misjudged corner can destroy suspension and season alike. Emma ran clean. Efficient. She finished second. Strategic points over spectacle. When she climbed from the cockpit, sweat darkening her collar, I could see the calculation already returning to her posture, championship math ticking behind her eyes. After interviews, she approached me briefly. Neutral, professional. "You okay?" she asked quietly. I was warned. Her expression hardened. "About us?" "About perception." She looked past me toward the team trailer, toward sponsors and contracts and everything she carried. "I told you this was leverage," she said. "And I told you I wouldn't write about it. That's not the only threat." Silence expanded between us, heavier than before. "What are you asking?" I said. She inhaled slowly. "I'm asking you to be careful." Careful. It sounded simple. It wasn't. Because being careful meant distance. It meant pretending the kiss in Texas hadn't shifted the axis of my world. It meant editing my instinct to step closer when she faltered. It meant watching her from behind press lines like I wasn't the one she searched for in a crowd. We managed it through the next 2 rounds. Brief eye contact, no physical contact, measured conversation, professionally impeccable, emotionally impossible. At Road America, a photographer caught a frame of US mid-conversation. Too close, too focused. something unspoken in the angle of our bodies. It didn't go public, not yet, but I saw it on a camera screen when I passed the media tent, and for the first time, the threat felt tangible. When I confronted her that evening behind the team transporter, she didn't deny the risk. "You can still step back," she said quietly. "Can you?" She didn't answer, because stepping back would require more than strategy. It would require surrender, and neither of us were built for that. But as the championship tightened and the scrutiny intensified, I began to understand something with unsettling clarity. Loving the top driver on the grid wasn't just dangerous for her, it was dangerous for me. And the closer we got to the final stretch of the season, the more I felt the choice forming, not as a dramatic ultimatum, but as a slow, inevitable convergence. Momentum. In racing, momentum doesn't ask permission. It carries you forward whether you're ready or not. Portland was supposed to be routine, late season. Tight championship battle, controlled pressure. Emma entered the weekend still leading, but the gap had narrowed to single digits. One bad result could flip everything, which meant there was no margin left for distraction. The media center buzzed more than usual. Championship narratives were forming, analysts speculating, drivers calculating scenarios out loud for press bites. I'd written enough features by then to understand how momentum shifts headlines before it shifts standings. Emma qualified second, strong, measured, strategic. But the paddock felt different, sharper. I noticed the camera linger longer during her walk from garage to pit lane. I noticed 2 reporters glance at me before she answered a question. I noticed Aaron from Motorsport Weekly, watching both of us instead of his notes. Paranoia? Maybe. Or maybe not. Race day was relentless. Tire strategy split the field. A mid-race caution stacked traffic. Emma defended aggressively but clean, forcing her closest rival to burn tires too early. It was textbook, until the final restart. 3 laps to go, cold brakes, dirty air. Her rival dived low into turn 1. Contact, slight. Enough. Emma held it. She finished third. Not disastrous, not safe. The championship lead shrank again. The post-race press conference was packed. 3 drivers on the dais, championship implications heavy in the air. Questions fired fast, about contact, about points, about pressure. Emma answered calmly. Then someone asked it, not about the race, about me. "Emma, there's been speculation about your relationship with certain members of the media this season. Does that impact your focus during a title fight?" The room stilled. It wasn't subtle, it wasn't coded, it was direct. Every camera turned toward her. My pulse hit my throat. She didn't look at me immediately. She leaned forward slightly, fingers laced, voice even. "My focus is on racing," the reporter pressed. "So you deny any off-track distractions?" The word hung there. Distractions. I saw it then. The shift in her shoulders. The calculation. The corners ahead. And then she looked at me. Not long. Just enough. In that second, something unspoken passed between us. "I don't allow distractions to affect performance," she said carefully. Not a denial. Not confirmation. Strategy. The room moved on. Another question. Another topic. But the damage was done. After the conference, chaos flooded the paddock. PR handlers moving quickly. Media chasing follow-ups. I stepped back automatically, instinct telling me to create distance. I almost made it to the edge of the garage before she caught up. "Mia." Her voice was low, urgent. "We can't talk here," I said, "then walk." We moved like we had in Long Beach, 5 feet apart, no contact, until we reached the back of the transporter where engines masked conversation. "That was deliberate," she said. "Yes. They're fishing." "Yes." Silence pressed in. "You should have denied it," I said quietly. She stared at me. Would that have helped? It would have killed the story, and lied. "You're allowed to protect your career." Her jaw tightened. "I am protecting it. By what? Ambiguity?" She stepped closer then, tension finally bleeding through control. "You think I don't understand what this costs?" "I think you don't understand what it costs me." The words escaped before I could filter them. She froze. "What does it cost you?" she asked. "My credibility," I replied. "If anyone thinks I'm protecting you, every story I've written loses weight." Her expression shifted, not defensive, not angry, but aware. "And if I deny it publicly," she said, voice softer now, "I protect the championship. And I protect you. By pretending I'm nothing, that's not what you are, then what am I?" The question hung there, fragile and sharp. Footsteps approached somewhere beyond the trailer. We both instinctively shifted apart. That's when she said it. Not loud, not dramatic, but with an honesty that stripped everything else away. Don't make me choose between you and my career. The words weren't a threat. They were fear. I felt something inside me tighten. I'm not asking you to choose, I said. Aren't you? Her eyes searched mine, not as a champion, not as a strategist, but as a woman cornered by forces she couldn't outcalculate. If this escalates, she continued, sponsors will intervene. My contract has morality language broad enough to interpret however they want. I could lose leverage, lose backing, lose the title. And what do I lose? I asked quietly. She didn't answer immediately. That silence hurt more than anything else. I can't afford cracks right now, she said finally. There it was again. Control. Math. Margins. I nodded slowly. I won't be the reason you lose, I said. That's not what I'm saying. It doesn't matter what you're saying. It matters what's happening. We stood there inches apart, everything unsaid pressing harder than anything spoken. For the first time since Texas, the kiss felt distant, not erased, but endangered. You still have a choice, she said quietly. The irony hit hard, so did the realization forming beneath it. Maybe she wasn't the only one who would have to choose. And for the first time all season, the thought of stepping back didn't feel like surrender. It felt like sacrifice. It surfaced on a Tuesday morning. Not on a major outlet. Not on a headline banner, just a motorsport blog with enough readership to matter and enough recklessness to publish without verification. The photo wasn't explicit. It didn't need to be. It was the frame from Road America, the one I'd glimpsed on a photographer's camera weeks ago. Emma and me standing too close behind the team transporter, my body angled toward her, her focus locked on me in a way that wasn't professional. The caption read, "More than media access?" That was all it took. By noon, my editor called. "Mia," he said carefully, "is there anything I need to know?" The tone wasn't accusatory, it was risk assessment. "No," I replied automatically. A pause. "Be honest with me." I stared at the image on my screen, magnified beyond context. Two women, mid-conversation. No touch, no kiss. Just proximity loaded with implication. "It's being exaggerated," I said. "That's not what I asked." My throat tightened. "It's not affecting my coverage." Another pause. "That's not what I asked either." I closed my eyes. "I'm not compromising the integrity of my work." He exhaled slowly. "Sponsors are sensitive this time of year. So are teams. I need to know if we're exposed." Exposed? The word echoed. "No," I said again. He didn't push further, but I could feel the weight shifting. Within hours, the blog post had been reshared across smaller accounts. Nothing explosive, just enough to create conversation. In racing, that's all it takes. Emma didn't text. She called. "Have you seen it?" she asked without greeting. "Yes." Silence on the line for a second. Engine noise faint in the background. Probably a simulator session. "This is exactly what I warned you about." "You think I leaked it?" I snapped. "That's not what I said." "It's what you implied." Her voice tightened. "I'm under review now." My stomach dropped. "By who?" "Two sponsors have requested clarification." "Clarification of what?" Standing near a journalist? "Perception shapes narrative," she said, repeating the same line her PR manager had used. I felt something fracture. "So what's the move?" I asked quietly. "Distance." The word hit harder than the photo ever could. "For how long?" I said. "Until the season ends. 3 races left. 3. "You want to pretend this never happened?" I asked. "I want to protect the championship. And me?" Silence. I hated that silence. "I can't lose leverage now," she said finally. I swallowed. "And I can't lose credibility." There it was. The real collision. She exhaled slowly. "If this escalates, your editor will question every story you've written about me. He already has." That seemed to land. "I didn't ask you to put yourself at risk," she said. "You didn't have to." We both knew the truth. No one forced momentum. We stepped into it willingly. The next race weekend in Laguna Seca felt different. Not hostile. Not dramatic. Just colder. We didn't speak outside official interviews. No private corners. No walking away from the crowd together. Her answers were sharper with me than with other reporters, almost overcompensating, professional, detached. It worked, mostly, but every time she climbed into the car, every time she strapped herself into that cockpit and disappeared under the halo and visor, I felt the distance like physical pressure. Championship math tightened again after Laguna. She finished 4th. Lead reduced to 3 points. The title would come down to the final race. The photo never exploded into scandal. But it didn't disappear either, and the night before the season finale in Monterey, my editor called again. "We need clarity," he said. "On what?" "On whether you're too close to the subject." I stared at the Pacific through my hotel window, waves crashing against dark cliffs below. "I've never protected a driver in print," I said. "That's not the question." "What is the question?" He paused. "Are you choosing the story or the driver?" The simplicity of it made my chest tighten, because for the first time, it felt like I couldn't have both. Later that evening, I saw Emma alone near the edge of the paddock, reviewing data on a tablet. The sunset painted the track gold. She looked calm, unreachable. For a moment, I almost turned away. Then she looked up. Our eyes met across the distance we had both manufactured. No anger, no accusation. Just the quiet understanding that the season, and whatever this was, had reached its final lap. And suddenly, the choice didn't feel theoretical anymore. It felt imminent. The final race of the season felt less like competition and more like judgment. 3 points separated Emma from the title. One mistake, one slow pit stop, one poorly timed caution. That was the margin. Monterey air carried salt from the Pacific and tension from every garage. The championship narrative dominated every broadcast. Analysts dissected strategy windows like surgeons. The grid looked the same as it always did. Polished cars, crew members moving with purpose, cameras hovering. But underneath it all, something was breaking. I didn't approach her that morning. I watched from the edge of the pit lane as she stood with her engineers, visor lifted, listening to race scenarios. Her posture was composed, shoulders squared, jaw relaxed. Ice, but when she climbed into the cockpit and pulled the belts tight, her eyes searched the pit wall just once. They found me. Then she dropped the visor, green flag. The first stint was controlled aggression. She defended cleanly, preserved tires, avoided unnecessary battles. The rival chasing her in the standings hovered just behind. Every lap felt like pressure tightening around a valve. Mid-race caution. The field stacked. Strategy split. Her team called for track position instead of fresh tires. Risk. I felt it in my bones. When the race restarted, she held firm. Lap after lap, the rival tried to force mistakes. She didn't give them any, but tension does strange things to time. The final 10 laps blurred into instinct and breath. I wasn't thinking about headlines. I wasn't thinking about blog speculation or morality clauses. I was thinking about the way she had said, "Don't make me choose." 5 laps to go. Her rival dove inside turn 5. Too deep. Locked up slightly. Emma held the outside line with impossible precision. 2 laps. Traffic ahead. 1 lap. She exited the final corner with just enough space. Checkered flag. She crossed the line second, but it was enough. Champion. The paddock erupted, engineers shouting, confetti cannons firing prematurely, cameras sprinting toward pit lane. She climbed out of the car, visor up, breath heavy. The weight of a season poured into that moment. Champion of the IndyCar series. I should have felt pride as a journalist covering the biggest story of the year. Instead, I felt something sharper, because I knew what came next. Post-race press conference, final questions. Narrative cemented. The media room overflowed. Championship banners behind her, trophy on the table. Flashbulbs firing relentlessly. She answered everything flawlessly. Strategy, resilience, team effort, legacy. Then, inevitably, the final question. "Emma, there were rumors this season about off-track distractions. Did any of that affect your performance?" The room held its breath. She didn't look at me this time. She looked straight ahead. "I don't allow distractions to define me," she said evenly. Applause followed. Respectful. Professional. The answer of a champion. And in that moment, I understood the truth she'd been orbiting all season. She wasn't going to choose. She was going to survive. The press conference ended. I stepped outside before the celebration began. My phone buzzed. It was my editor. "We're running your championship feature tonight," he said, "but I need your confirmation." "Of what?" "That you can remain objective next season." Next season. The words felt distant. I watched the team gather around Emma near the podium. Cameras flashing, champagne uncorked, objectivity, credibility, access, career, and somewhere in the middle of that noise, a quieter truth rose up. I didn't want to write about her anymore. I wanted to stand beside her. That realization wasn't explosive. It was steady, like traction finally found. I didn't wait for fireworks. I opened my email. Subject line, resignation. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. 7 years of work, national reputation, access to the grid. All of it condensed into a single decision. I typed carefully. Professional tone. Gratitude expressed. Effective immediately following the publication of the championship feature. No explanation beyond personal reasons. My thumb hovered over send. In racing, hesitation costs time. I pressed it. The sound of champagne bottles popping echoed from the podium. And for the first time all season, the pressure lifted. Not because the world had changed, but because I had. She found out from me. Not from the press release. Not from a notification. Not from a rumor passing through the paddock like exhaust. From me. The championship celebration spilled into the hospitality suite, overlooking the track. Music low, but present. Sponsors shaking hands. Team members glowing with the quiet pride of survival. Emma moved through it all like she'd been built for this exact moment. Composed, grateful, champion. I waited until the room thinned, until champagne turned into slower conversations, and cameras drifted toward other headlines. When she saw me near the balcony doors, her expression shifted slightly. Not public, not private, something suspended between. You disappeared, she said. I needed air. She stepped outside with me, the Pacific wind cutting through the warmth of the room behind us. The ocean below churned dark and steady, waves colliding against rock with a force that felt honest. You were brilliant, I said. Her lips curved faintly. It wasn't brilliant. It was calculated. That's what makes it brilliant. For a moment we stood in silence, then she studied my face more closely. What happened? She asked. I could have eased into it. I didn't. I resigned. The word didn't land immediately. It floated between us, weightless. You what? I sent my resignation tonight. Her body went still in a way I had never seen before. Not even before a restart. Why? She asked, voice low. I let the wind carry a breath out of me. Because my editor asked if I could remain objective next season. And I can't. Her jaw tightened. Mia. This isn't a sacrifice, I continued before she could redirect. It's a choice. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. She took a step closer, searching my face for doubt. You built that career from nothing, she said. You fought for that credibility. I did. And you're walking away because of a photo and some gossip? No. Her eyes sharpened. Then why? Because I don't want to keep pretending I'm neutral about you. I didn't say it that way, but the truth was close. Because I don't want to spend next season writing around my own feelings, I said instead. I don't want to analyze your corner entry and pretend my pulse doesn't change when you look at me. The honesty stripped something between us. She swallowed. I never asked you to choose, she said quietly. You did, I replied. You just didn't realize it. Silence pressed in, not hostile, not distant, but heavy with everything we had avoided naming. I told you not to make me choose between you and my career, she said. And I'm not. Her brow furrowed slightly. You won the championship, I continued. You protected your season, your sponsors, your contracts. You didn't have to choose. Her voice dropped. But you did. Yes. The word felt steady. No tremor. No regret. For the first time since Texas, there was no strategy in the air, no calculation, no risk assessment. Just two women standing on a balcony, with the ocean crashing below. You could have waited, she said softly. For what? For me to decide. I shook my head. That's not how this works. She studied me like she studies telemetry, searching for hidden variables. Are you angry? She asked. No. Disappointed? No. Then what are you? I stepped closer, close enough to feel the warmth of her skin despite the wind. Certain. Her breath shifted. I don't want to orbit your career, I said. I want to be part of your life. There it was. Uncomplicated. Unshielded. The champion's composure fractured then, not in panic, not in fear, but in relief. You're terrifying, she murmured. Why? Because you move without hesitation. You drive at 200 miles an hour. That's different. I smiled faintly. Not really. For a long moment, she just looked at me. Not as a driver, not as a public figure, not as someone protecting leverage, just as Emma. You should have told me, she said finally. I'm telling you now. Inside, applause rose again as someone replayed footage of her final lap on a screen. She glanced toward the noise, then back at me. I built everything around control. she admitted quietly. Every decision, every risk, every public word. I know. And you just removed the one variable I was trying to manage. Good. A faint laugh escaped her, surprised. Almost disbelieving. You don't even know what that does to me, she said. Then tell me. The wind caught her hair, pulling it across her face. She didn't brush it away immediately. It makes me want to stop calculating, she said. I stepped into her space fully then. Then stop. No cameras, no microphones, no sponsors, just us. She exhaled slowly, like releasing something she'd carried for months. I thought I was protecting you, she said. You were protecting your season, and now? Now there's no season to protect. The simplicity of that truth shifted everything. Inside, the music swelled louder. Outside, the ocean kept crashing, indifferent to contracts and championships. Emma closed the last inch between us. This kiss wasn't careful. It wasn't restrained. It wasn't testing traction. It was intentional. Certain. When she pulled back, her forehead rested against mine again. But this time there was no fear in it. You're not a distraction, she said quietly. Good. You're the one thing I don't want to calculate. And for the first time all season, neither of us was thinking 3 corners ahead. The story broke the next morning, not the photo, not the rumor. My resignation. It ran quietly in industry circles first. A short notice from my publication thanking me for 7 years of coverage and wishing me success in future endeavors. Motorsport Twitter did what it always does, speculate. Was I moving to another outlet? Joining a team? Burned out? I didn't correct anything. Emma called me before the speculation could grow legs. They're already asking if you're joining my media department, she said. Please tell me you didn't suggest that. A small laugh. I didn't. The paddock was still dismantling from the season finale. Transporters loading, hospitality units folding into aluminum and silence, championship banners coming down. Seasons end quickly in racing. Lives don't. I've got sponsor obligations today, she said. Then one final team dinner tonight, I know. There was a pause. Not heavy, not uncertain, just full. Come to dinner, she said. It wasn't impulsive. It wasn't whispered. It was deliberate. Are you sure? I asked. Yes. Not as a secret. Not as a risk. Just yes. The restaurant overlooked the coastline. Glass walls framing the Pacific in restless motion. The team filled 2 long tables. Engineers, mechanics, strategists. People who had lived inside the same tension for 9 months. When Emma walked in, conversation lifted naturally. Champion energy still clung to her, but it was lighter now, less defensive. She found my eyes almost immediately, and didn't look away. There was a flicker. Curiosity from a few team members who knew enough to suspect, but there was no confrontation, no whispers erupting into scandal. She crossed the room and stopped beside me. Everyone, she said evenly, drawing attention without demanding it. This is Mia. A simple introduction, no qualifiers, no disclaimers, just my name. The moment wasn't explosive. No one gasped. No one stormed out. A few exchanged glances. One of the senior engineers nodded subtly, like he'd already done the math. And then someone asked about tire strategy in Texas. Conversation resumed, not because it didn't matter, but because it wasn't catastrophic. Later, outside under patio lights strung between wooden beams, I leaned against the railing overlooking the ocean. She joined me. That wasn't dramatic, I said. I didn't want it to be. You're okay with this? I'm not hiding it. The distinction felt important. There will be questions next season, I said. There always are. And sponsors? She shrugged lightly. I won a championship. Confidence, not arrogance. You're not worried? I was worried about losing the title, she said. Not about being honest. The wind carried salt into the air between us. The ocean below moved without hesitation, wave after wave refusing to calculate impact. I kept thinking I needed to protect clean air, she said quietly. You did. But clean air doesn't mean isolation. I smiled faintly. You really are strategic about everything. She stepped closer. Not this. For the first time all year, her posture held no defensive edge, no forward lean bracing for attack. Just presence. What happens now? She asked. I had thought about that. I'm taking time off, I said. Freelance work. Maybe long-form features that don't require embedded access. Not racing? Not your racing. She studied me. That's not distance, she said carefully. It's boundary. She nodded slowly. I can live with that. Inside, laughter rose again from the table. A mechanic telling a story about a near-botched pit stop in Detroit. Someone imitating a radio transmission. The season compressing into anecdotes instead of anxiety. She reached for my hand openly. No glance around first. No scan for cameras. Just contact. Do you regret it? She asked softly. My resignation? Yes. I thought about it honestly. The years of work. The adrenaline of deadlines. The satisfaction of breaking stories before anyone else. Then I looked at her. Not under press lights. Not behind a visor. Just Emma. Wind tugging at her hair. Ocean behind her instead of grandstands. No, I said. She held my gaze for a long second. I don't regret not choosing, she replied. You didn't. I didn't have to. There was something powerful in that. Not sacrifice, not martyrdom. Just alignment. Inside, someone called her name, raising a glass for one final toast to the champion. She didn't move immediately. They'll wait, she said. They will. She leaned in, not urgent, not hidden, and kissed me under the open sky. Not restrained like Texas, not desperate like Monterey, steady, certain. When she pulled back, her hand remained in mine. Next season, she said quietly, I want you in the stands, not the media center. Front row? Always. Behind us, applause erupted as her team clinked glasses. Ahead of us, the Pacific kept moving, unbothered by contracts and championships. And for the first time since this season began, I wasn't watching her from the pit wall.